Okay, great. Looks like everyone can hear me, so we're going to go ahead and jumpstart into our LearnCQ office hours today, August 22nd. For those of you who are new, LearnCQ office hours are typically every week at 1 p.m. Central Time. It's something that we've started in the past couple months to go through any questions that our users have that may be shared among other users. So the idea behind it is that open office hours, we're here for about 45 minutes to an hour to answer your questions, go through new things that may be available to you in the system, and just really communicate and allow you guys a space where you can contact us for a full hour of your time. So today we're going to go through the LearnCQ office hours. It's going to be a little bit different than our typical sessions just because we did have a release that happened as of Monday of this week. So as a quick introduction for those of you who may be new here today, my name is Caitlin Dotson. Most of you have spoken to me before. I am kind of customer success here at CalcuQuote, making sure all of our customers are up to date on what's going forward. If you guys have any questions on product feedback, etc., I'm your person. So I've worked with CalcuQuote for about a couple of years now and continuously going to do so. So I'm going to be working through the new office hours things today, as well as talk about the new features that have just been released as of Monday. So as I mentioned, our agenda today, we're going to go through what's new in CQ. It's our new in CQ section of our release notes. So just as a backup, every 3 to 4 weeks, we do release new features and functionality within the system. Some of them can be a little bit more major. Some of them are a little bit more minor, just depending on what our team has gotten to and what's on our product roadmap. So we'll go through those new things today that are important to our users. We've also released release notes on those. So as of Monday afternoon, you should have received some type of release notes that are discussing all of the new features, but we'll go through the system and discuss them as well. After that, we'll have our typical open office hours session. So open office hours is really just driven by those who are attending today. So if there are any questions regarding anything within the system that you may have, a question on, want to go through a module, really open, and that's why we call it the open office hours session. So think of any time where someone's available to you to ask whatever questions are on your mind. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start with the what's new in CQ section today. So this is just going through the new features that we released as of Monday of this week to talk about what may be available to us. All right. And as I'm discussing these, feel free to put questions in the chat or the Q&A section and we can go through those together. Okay, so the new features here, and I'm going to go through these real time as well. So we're going to go into the actual application and review these so that you can kind of get an idea of where everything is as we go through it. So the first new feature here is the multi-line selection. So I'm just going to go to the actual system, as I mentioned, to actually explain this. So I'm here in CalcuQuote. This is our demo site, and I'm going to go to a demo, a demo RFQ here. I'll just pick a random one. So the new feature is the multi-selection feature. So previously, everything was done at a per line basis. You would have to do multiple things one line at a time. Now what you can do is on the left-hand side, you'll see these check marks. So what I can do is I can check any line that I need to. Let's say I want to check all of the lines that don't have pricing. We'll check a couple here. And now I have the ability to edit and review those lines. So over in the top right-hand corner, you'll see the view has changed just slightly. So now I can click edit, and I have the ability to, one, run update pricing on all of those lines that I've selected, run auto select just on those lines that I've selected, clear pricing, clear selections. I can no bid all of those line items, which has been a really highly requested feature to no bid specific line items. I can add those specific line items to a bid sheet, or I can decide to bid those by a line card, which we can get into if there are any questions regarding that. So it's just a way to change the view and be able to more easily multi-select lines that you would like to edit in some sort of way. We'll be enhancing this in the future, but for now, this is going to be the initial kind of pass at it, and it should help a lot in the functionality and just the user experience of more easily being able to move things through the process. Now, you do still have some things over on the left-hand side here with these three vertical dots. So you do still have the ability to attach your documents at a line item level, as well as suggest an alternate at a line item level. So Going forward, you'll be able to do this at a multi-line item level, but for right now, it is going to be still at a per line item level for the documents as well as the alternates. Okay. So that's the new review feature. Again, it's very functional, so I can click all of my line items, I can click none of them, and that'll just take me back to the normal screen. So that's the first feature for today. The next one we'll go to is update pricing for alternates. So I want to kind of talk about this one a little bit. So there's multiple ways where you can get an alternate into CalcuQuote. One of the ways is to just find an alternate yourself. So you can go out to your customer, ask them for an alternate. You can go out and look for an alternate yourself. Or you can go through DigiKey. Maybe you can ask DigiKey if there's a suggested alternate. You could look into your ERP system. As many of you know, there's a lot of ways to do it. There's also a way to do it in CalcuQuote now, and we mentioned this last time, but kind of something that we want to reiterate as we've enhanced it just a little bit. So now when I go to Suggest Alternate, and this is for a specific line item, so I can add an alternate part. So this is if you got an alternate from your customer. If you have an alternate yourself that you want to suggest, you can suggest it in this section here. Or you can get a suggested part from a couple sources. We are integrated with Silicon Expert, which is in beta mode, so that'll be available as well. But as everyone here has currently, they have the integration with DigiKey, so I can click on DigiKey and get a suggested alternate from DigiKey if they're available. Or I can do it based on my history. So if I've seen this KOA part before and I've suggested an alternate, my history will tell me that. And I have. So based on my history, I have some alternates that I've suggested for this part number. So the difference here is that when I select my part numbers, previously I would submit them and have to go to each line item and run update pricing. Now it'll automatically run update pricing for me. So I can click submit. Oh, that one's already added, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. Let's see here. We'll just try this one. It must already be added in the section. All right, looks like it might have already been added. Yep, so we're gonna go to a different one here. Sorry about that. So let's see, let's do be a good one for this. Let's try a Panasonic part here. So I'm gonna suggest my alternate. Click DigiKey, let's see if there's any from DigiKey. There's none from DigiKey. Maybe some based on my history here. Okay, I'm gonna add just a random alternate here. I'm gonna say this is a Panasonic alternate. The suggested NPN is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Reason notes would be other is not available a year. Okay, I can add as much information as I need to. Now when I submit, oops, I'll make a selection there. So now when I submit, the difference, as I had mentioned, is it's going to automatically start my pricing for that line item. And by automatically, I mean it's going to pull up the update pricing screen for that one line item so I can select which suppliers I would like to query for that line. So typically, as you would see update pricing, this is the list you're going to see. I can decide I want to run all, or maybe this is a specific DigiKey part I just want to run DigiKey on. Maybe I just want to use a couple. So I'm just going to use a couple here. And then I can go about suggesting alternates for others. So the main difference here is that it's automatically going to bring up the suppliers that you'd like to query for that part and pull pricing in. That way, you don't have to go through, reselect the part, rerun update pricing, etc. Okay. All right. The next one here is the filter view for Bedsheets. So I'm going to go back to our handy quote here. I'm going to create a bid sheet, so I'm going to select all of the lines on the left-hand side as we had kind of talked about earlier. And actually, I'm just going to select a couple here. So I selected 4 lines. I need to send these out in a bid sheet. I'm going to click Add to Bid Sheet. I'm going to send it to myself. And I've sent 7 line items, so 7 parts, and I'm going to close it out here. So the new thing that's with the bid view is now when I click on this bid, It's going to consolidate and filter out just the line items that I've sent in that bid. Reason for that is just to be able to clearly identify which line items I've sent to my supplier and maybe just take them into consideration when I'm making pricing selections. Maybe I want to look at the ones that they submitted back to me. It's really helpful, especially when they do send a bid sheet back. You can see which of the line items they quoted, which ones they didn't, which ones they did send back for, etc. And then you can quickly remove that filter either by clicking the Remove Filter button in the top right-hand corner or just clicking on the bid sheet again. So a lot of little features that we've changed just to enhance it a lot better for a user experience. So you'll notice that as we go through the rest of these here. The next one is additional columns in the price selector. This has been a really highly requested one that we are really happy to finally get to announce to our customers. So if I go into a line item here, I'm going to click into a price and go to the CQ price selector. And it's going to open up the CQ price selector here. The Zoom meeting causes a little bit of a slowdown. Sorry about that. But in the top right-hand corner now, I have the ability to show my internal part number and customer part number in this field, something that was not available previously and, again, was a very highly requested feature so that we could add these here. It's really good to reference when you need to reference an internal part number when you're selecting an alternate or just verifying a part. If you need to reference something and take it to your ERP system, now that reference is in the CQ price selector screen, so you don't have to cancel out of this screen and go to the material costing view. Okay. So another feature that was highly requested and we're happy to announce is available now. Okay. The next one here is cancel bid sheets. So previously, you would have to go through the process of unselecting specific line items, and it was a little bit more tedious to cancel a bid sheet. So let's say this was a bid sheet I created. I decided I don't actually need it because I found pricing for those parts. So now what I can do is where it says send, I can say cancel bid. And it'll let me know that I've canceled that bid sheet. So again, a lot of these are really, they seem minimal, but they're enhancing the user experience here, and they should make the system a lot more intuitive and easy to use. Okay. The next one is view descriptions and material review. So I'm going to go to the review tab in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and I'm going to specifically look at my cross-match parts. So as most of you are aware, cross-match parts are parts where the system found a potential alternate to the original part number. And they were selected, but they would just be a little bit differentiation, and we call them out in this view here. That way, there's always a capabilities to make sure that that is a correct part number or a part number that is valid as an alternate. What we did here is we added the ability to see the description from your bill of material as well as the description from the supplier. So you can compare and contrast what was the original description versus the new description. So if you'll notice now, when I click on these three horizontal lines, the hamburger icon down at the bottom here is BOM description as well as supplier description. So if there was a BOM description or a supplier description, this RFQ unfortunately does not have that. You would be able to see those here, and you can compare and contrast. You could remove your NPN notes so you don't have to see that, as well as your material at risk notes. And you could just kind of review these here. Okay. All right. The last one is the all assembly labor report. Again, something that has been highly requested in the past. So I'm going to go to one of the multi-level assemblies or multi-level bill of materials we have in the demo system here and pull up the labor tab. And on the labor tab, so as you'll notice, this is a multi-level bill of material. I have multiple layers of my assembly. So I have my top level, 4 subs, and then a couple subs within those sub-assemblies. So now what I can do is under export, there's an option for all assembly total report. So if I click on that, it's going to give me the cost of each of my sub-assemblies as well as the combined cost of everything. So I can compare and contrast, see which assembly is costing me the most, and see if I need to make some modifications. Okay. So I'm going to open it up here and we'll just take a quick peek at it. So we'll go back to the screen. So again, it's going to be a pretty simple report. It's going to have just the cost for each of my quantities and see which of the costs is costing me the most. All right. So those are going to be the basic features. There are a couple more that we didn't mention here. I would definitely recommend going to our LearnCQ site so you can review those. It's going to have everything that you would need to know about the new features, as well as new how-to articles for those new features. We're always updating it and making improvements, so definitely check that out if you haven't. You should have received an email on Monday afternoon with the new features, the release notes, and the how-to articles that go alongside those. So if you didn't get that, definitely let us know, and we'll make sure you're on that list to receive those every time we do new releases. The new release did happen as of Monday, and there will be another one in a few weeks again, as they're typically about every 4 weeks. Okay. So that's the what's new section. Now is to just get started with our typical office hours. So send in your questions, whether it's in the chat or the Q&A, we'll answer them, share them with the group, and we can go from there. And again, for those of you who are joining us for maybe the first time for our office hours, it really is driven by customers, so the team. So as you have questions, submit those and we'll go through them together. Some of you have mentioned that you didn't receive the email on Monday afternoon. If you didn't, we'll just make sure you're added in the system. So I'll take note of that today and make sure that that gets updated by our account manager. All right, there is a question regarding the labor section. So I'm going to go to the labor tab in a newer RFQ here. Okay, so I'm going to select, let's do, oops, actually I want to do a labor that's not completed yet. Actually, this will work. Okay, so let me just kind of explain the idea behind the labor. So labor in CalcuQuote is going to always be, really subjective to the customer who is using the account. So every customer is going to have a different labor model than others. What we have in the system here is all demo activities. It's not based off of anything other than just maybe what a typical, basic activities would look like in a production line. So the idea behind labor is that you would think of any activity that could be done for that job. So from receiving the PO to processing the order to shipping it out, everything that could need to be accounted for should be accounted for when you're quoting labor, because you want to account for that cost that your customer is going to need to be charged. So everyone's is going to look a little bit different because your activities are going to be a little bit different. But on the left-hand side here, there is going to be your activities. So the idea is that you would select all of the activities that would be appropriate for this job. So let's say I'm going to do all of these. I'm not going to do, let's say I'm not going to do conformal code for this one, etc. So again, the idea is just to go through each of these and pick the ones that are appropriate for this job. Once you do that, you're going to select this icon here and move them over to the right-hand side. So on the left is all of your activities that could happen, and the ones you move to the right are all the ones that you're going to need to account for. In the guided labor screen here, this is going to walk you through each of the activities, what the cost is going to be, etc. So as an example, I have front office documentation. It's a setup activity, so it's going to be done once per job, and it's going to get calculated over the cost of each of my quantities. So I do this once, and it's going to get divided by my quantities because it's a setup. Okay. So front office documentation, it's billed at 30 minutes per job. The system knows there's only one job and there's a 100% learning curve. So there's no way I'm going to get better at this as I go because there's no room for improvement. So based on the calculations here, it's 30 minutes per job, adds half an hour and $10 to the first unit setup. So based on my configuration settings. I have these numbers here that calculate down here, and I can go through each of my activities and see what the cost is. Okay. Since I already have some activities, the idea would be that you would submit all of these, but I already have some down here, so we're just going to review those. So you can see I have all of my activities on the left-hand side here. I have the standard time that they get pulled in with. This is something that's set up in configuration, so if the standard times need to change, we can adjust those. The unit of time, the driver, so what causes that part to happen. So as an example, if there were no S&T parts, then pick and place wouldn't be a valid activity. There's 350 pick and place parts here, so pick and place needs to be done, so on and so forth. The labor rate that's set up, so labor is also something that's configured on the back end, and then the calculations happen for the hours or dollars per unit. Then you get into your quantities, so I have a quantity of 10, 50, and 100, but I have different run counts I'm quoting, so I'm quoting 10 at 2 weeks, 10 at 4 weeks, 50 at 4 weeks, and 100 at 4 weeks. Okay. So you can see the different calculations here. I can scroll down and see what the totals are, see the difference, and those are going to be the prices that would combine on my summary tab, and I would quote my customer. So really the biggest significant thing on the labor tab is the setup. Setting it up is just kind of the most, I guess, the hardest part, just because it needs to be specific to how you do and how you work your production line. But once you have the setup, it's pretty easy to just go through and identify what needs to be accounted for when you are quoting that job, and then just making sure that the driver counts are accurate as well as the cost. I think there was another question about assembly labor, but I'm not sure what the question means. So if you could clarify that question, I'm happy to answer it. All right. So any other questions, continue to throw them at us. Again, we can go through any of the features that we talked about earlier. We can talk about feedback items. Really, it's just going to be dependent on, kind of what's on your mind. Feel free, you can go ahead and use the chat here. The chat typically works the best. It'll just be sent to the panelists who are on the call, not all of the users. So go ahead and send it to us and we can talk through it that way, or you can use the Q&A and it's just sent to me. So for those of you asking how to send in questions, that's the best way to do it. All right. So there was a question regarding multi-level assemblies and the new assembly labor report. So let me just go through that really quickly. So if you haven't checked it out yet or haven't used the functionality, CalcuQuote does have the ability to identify multi-level bill of materials or to identify just multiple assemblies that you want to consolidate into one bill of material or into one RFQ and take into consideration the consolidation. So let me go back to that RFQ where we did have a multi-level bill of material. I'm going to click on the B for this. So this is one RFQ. That's how it was inputted in the system. On the RFQ tab, it was added as one RFQ and identified the main board quantities that need to be quoted. Now, this one was done a couple different ways. So you can do this a couple different ways. So essentially the idea behind it is, one, if you have a multi-level bill of material and it's in one Excel file, so all of your parts for every level of the bill of material or every level, each sub-assembly, top assembly, et cetera, is in one Excel file, you probably have something like a parent part number that identifies where that part goes on the board. So that, you know, part number 1, 2, 3 goes into the top level assembly ABC. So there should be some type of reference of where that line item or part goes on the board or which assembly that part goes into. So if that's the case, as long as you have those parent part numbers, you can upload it into the system and CalcuQuote will be able to identify what is my top assembly, what are my sub-assemblies, and what are the parts that go into that top or sub or multiples, right? The other way to do it is if you have your top assembly, sub-assembly, or just multiple assemblies within different Excel files, you can set them up in the system yourself. So I can come in here and say, okay, I have a top level assembly, and you can see I already have some here. There's one of these top level assemblies. Oops. And I can identify it. So the biggest thing is making sure that you identify which of your line items are your top level and sub-assemblies, because that's going to tell the system that these aren't part numbers or parts that you need to purchase. They're boards that you're building, or there's some type of assembly that you're building and you need the parts that are within it. So again, the idea is that you would have either multiple bill of materials or one bill of material for a multi-level BOM or a multi-level RFQ. So now what I can see is on the left-hand side here, I have these little icons. Each of these mean that there's a BOM that goes into this. So if I click on this here, I can see that within that sub-assembly, there's parts. So there's these 3 parts that go within that sub-assembly. So I have an SMT part, but then I also have 2 subs within that sub. So I can click on that on the left-hand side again and see what parts go into that sub of the sub. And this gets a little confusing just because we're talking about such an in-depth level, but down at the bottom, I can see how it works. So I have a top level assembly. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 subs underneath that top level assembly. And then I have another sub within the sub, and then 2 more sub-assemblies within my other sub-assembly. So altogether there are 8 levels. Right? So just depending on the size of your multi-level bill of material, how many assemblies you want, you could have multiple subs, you could all just have a top level or a group of assemblies and list all of them. You would just need to import your bill of materials. So as you can see within each of these, when I click on them, I have my specific line items that go into that bill of material. And what happens is once I submit and move on to labor, I have the opportunity to quote labor per sub-level or per assembly level. So down here at the bottom, I can say, okay, for my top level, I need to do all of these activities, right? So I always need to do receiving, I always need to do kitting, I always need to do purchasing, etc. But for my camera assembly, maybe I need to do pick and place, where for let's do it this way. For camera assembly, maybe I need to account for conformal coat, but for loudspeaker, I don't need to account for conformal coat. So there's a different way to identify your labor activities for each of your levels. And that's kind of how you would enter labor for each of them. So you would click into each of them, and you would add the specific labor activities that are associated with that level. And it definitely helps if you have a real example that you're working through. So if you do have a multi-level bill of material, or you have, let's say, an RFQ with a request for 5 assemblies that are going to get consolidated together, go ahead and let us know, and we're happy to walk you through it that first time, especially just as you're getting used to it, because it does have to be set up a little bit different. So down in the right-hand corner here, you'll be able to just talk to us and give us a shout, and we can help set it up for you. Great questions, though. Any other questions on anything here? We're looking at quite a good amount of new features for our next release. So, you know, all of that stems from your feedback, things we've heard from customers. So as you have that, definitely let us know. We have a great online community with LearnCQ. So there was a question. Oops. About multi-level bill of materials on LearnCQ. That's a great question. Let me go ahead and see if I can pull it up here. And I may not be logged in, but let me just double check. Okay, let me see if I can remember my password to get logged in here. If you don't have a LearnCQ account, you should definitely sign up for it. We're actually looking to kind of enhance it and revamp it going forward so that it's really useful for our customers. Right now, it definitely has a lot of good stuff, but we're just trying to make that even better. So if you don't have anything, or if you don't have a LearnCQ account yet, definitely sign up for one, as it's going to be a really important feature. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just type in multi-level. I believe we do have some help articles here. Okay, so this is going to go through kind of how to set up your multi-level bill of material and CalcuQuote. So it's going to tell you that you're going to go in there, create an RFQ, add your assemblies, add your line items, and identify your specific line items as top or sub-level assemblies. I think we do also have some, or have a video on this as well. Let me see if I can direct you to a video. We have done a webinar on this before. It looks like our site, or let's see, the service may be down here. Zendesk may be down. Let me see if I can pull it up on my other browser. Okay. Looks like there may be an issue with Zendesk today, which is our third-party tool for our knowledge base. So I may not be able to pull it up, but I might be able to pull it up on YouTube and show you, and I can share the link with you as well. Let's see here. If you haven't attended one of our other webinars, which are our more industry knowledge-based webinars, we do webinars around that kind of stuff as well. So that is something that would be available to you, and we have those on our website also, or on our LearnCQ site. Typically, when it's working. Oh, here we go. Okay. So underneath webinars, there is a webinar, and I will tell you just which one it is, but it's going to be this LearnCQ Office Hours March 2017. That's going to walk you through how the consolidated BOM works. So the consolidated BOM, or multi-level bill of material, and I won't play the sound here, but this is basically, you know, a 40-minute discussion. It's going to go through a lot of the new things that we had released as of that month, which was obviously over a year ago. But it'll also go through a best practice of how to use consolidated how to use the consolidated cost of BOM feature, which is the multi-level bill of material feature. So it'll go through the consolidation scenarios, so how you want to consolidate, why you want to consolidate, the type of consolidations with the sample bill of material. So you'll see that here is going to be a sample bill of material where we go through how to set up your bill of material in order to get it imported into CalcuQuote for a multi-level. So that's going to be a really helpful feature. We'll go through the actual use case in CalcuQuote as well. So definitely check out the March LearnCQ office hours as of 2017. And I'll go ahead and just send this link out. I think I can send it out to all attendees in the chat. So just send that out to all the attendees. That way everyone has that. It's definitely going to be the best way to go through it, which is just to talk about it in this kind of format and just watch it at your convenience as you have a real example. It always works best when you have a real example. That way you can learn how to do it. Okay. And you should have received that link, so definitely check your chat box so you can see if you've received the link. Some really great questions though. So as you have those, keep submitting them. There's a lot of stuff on LearnCQ, a lot of webinars that we've done. We started our webinars back in the beginning of 2017. So we've been doing them for almost 2 years now, have really pushed them because we think it's a really valuable source to just get in front of our customers and talk to them about what's important. So if you haven't ever checked those out, definitely go to LearnCQ. As I mentioned, we are revamping this, so it's going to be a lot more, wholesome, et cetera, and going to have a lot more information. The other great thing that I always like to mention is the community section down here. While it may seem minor, this is where we get, and again, there's something going on with Zendesk, but this is where we get a lot of recommendations from customers. So in the community section, if I join the conversation, I can see there's 21 feature requests for CalcuQuote, BidCQ, new product requests, etc. So as you submit those, or as you think of ideas that would be good, just as a business case, you guys use this quite a bit. You can see all of the ones that have been submitted here, and we go through these and make sure that they're added to our product backlog. So as you can see, there's a couple here, gives a good explanation, and what we'll do is we'll add this, and our product team will go through these and make sure that they are taken into consideration as we're enhancing the modules. Okay. All right. Keep the questions coming though. They've been great today. We still have about 15 to 20 minutes. So if you have any other questions, definitely let us know. I also definitely encourage you to have your colleagues who use CalcuQuote join. That way they can keep up with what's going on. We will try to post these in our webinar section. Typically, these are just open office hours, so there are a lot of just random questions, so we don't typically post them, but we're going to try to do that going forward and see if that helps those who can't make it during this time slot. If you have recommendations on what you'd like to see during office hours, or maybe a different time slot that would typically work a little bit better, maybe it's a Friday or a Monday, let us know. That way we can just accommodate everybody. If this is a time slot that doesn't typically work, maybe we can move it to another time slot that's a little bit better for everyone's hours of the day. So we'll give it a couple more minutes here if there's no other questions. We'll give it a couple minutes and we'll go ahead and just end today's session, but feel free, if there are last minute questions, go ahead and submit them in the Q&A or chat and we can answer those. But if there are no more questions for those of you who are just about to hop off, thanks for attending. We really appreciate it, appreciate your feedback. So if there is anything else we can do to improve, just let us know. All right, there is one last question here about risk assessment. Risk assessment is probably not something that everyone has, but I'm happy to just kind of go through the basics of it. So the idea behind risk assessment is if you are AS9100, have some type of certifications that you need to meet in regards with your audits, et cetera, whatever they may be, you can identify an overall RFQ risk before you quote it and during the RFQ process. So if, let's say, as you're going through the bill of material, going through the document requirements, et cetera, you find some type of risk, and it can be anything, right? So it doesn't have to necessarily be what the categories are here. These are really just for a demonstration of what the categories could be. But you can get an idea that, if there is a financial risk with this, let's say the customer is a smaller customer and in the past they haven't been able to make their payments. So maybe that's a risk. This is going to be a risk to you, right? It's just really giving you an identification of, is this something that you should be worried about? So again, the categories here can be anything. These are all configurable within your configuration section of your screen. These are just here to give you an idea of what they could be. So again, this risk assessment is really to meet the AS9100 standards, the new standards that are in the industry to capture that type of risk. It's not a thing that a lot of people use within CalcuQuote, but if you'd like to kind of get a better understanding and start using it in the system, we do have some customers who use it on the regular and will use it even when they're going through their audits. So it's definitely not to just identify the issues that are listed out here, the categories that are here. You can add more, you can identify them. I'm sure there's some way that, you're currently identifying potential risk of an RFQ, just kind of taking that into consideration. Again, it's just good to keep for track records. hopefully that answered your question. If not, feel free to send up a follow-up question there. All right, great. Any last minute questions? I'll keep this open for about 3-4 more minutes here, just so we hit the 50 mark of the hour, and we'll go ahead and end today's session at that point. All right, we're going to go ahead and end today's session. Thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. Again, if you have any feedback about these sessions, what you'd like to see, definitely let us know, and we'll definitely make the improvements there. And we're just, happy that you guys were able to join us today. So if there's anything else, feel free to let us know going forward, either through LearnCQ or the chat icon there in your application, and we'll be happy to answer. Thanks again for joining. Have a great rest of the week, everybody.